Joining me now to discuss it all, Admiral James Stav, CNN senior military analyst and a former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, and David Sanger, CNN political and national security analyst. He's also the White House and national security correspondent for the New York Times. David, your lead story in the New York Times when I checked in very early this morning begins this way. Ask diplomats who have negotiated with Iran, and they usually describe it with some variant of brace yourself, it takes a long time. So what then can reasonably be accomplished within President Trump's 2-week time period?
Probably not much, Michael. That the truth of the matter is that it took 2 years to get the Obama-era agreement with Iran, which was the one agreement that was the most successful at restraining, not ending, their nuclear program. The other efforts that we've had, sabotage, cyber attacks, have set things back months or years. The Stuxnet attack, the cyber attack 15 years ago, probably took a year and a half off the program, but they've come back. And so the real question is, in 2 weeks, could you get Iran to agree to do what the president asked for, unconditional surrender? We're not sure what that means, but probably it means, okay, you can come in and destroy all of our facilities. Probably not. They'd probably decide instead to take their chances. And we're not sure they have 2 weeks. The president has said up to 2 weeks. He's also called for a National Security Council meeting tonight, Saturday night, in Washington, for which he's flying back from his golf retreat. So it's very possible he's on a different schedule.
Admiral Stavridis, to this untrained eye, looking at the satellite images of Fordo, it looks like it's surrounded by miles of sand, making me wonder, could it be taken more easily from the ground?
I think it could be taken from the ground, but you'd have to put a lot of boots on that ground, and it would be orders of magnitude more risky, obviously. But I'm sure the Israelis have a contingency to do that. I want to go back to the intelligence for just one moment and provide an image here. Think about a kitchen, and there's a rogue cook in the kitchen. He's locked the door, and he's got all the ingredients to make beef stew on the counter. He's got beef, he's got carrots, he's got potatoes, he's got onions. The pot is boiling, the door is locked. That's forward out. You just don't know what's going on in there. That's why it's such a back and forth. But if you're Israel and that beef stew is going to poison you and destroy your country, you're pretty motivated to break down the door and make sure the cook doesn't have the ingredients. So, yeah, the Israelis would love the United States to come in and blow up the kitchen. They will have a ground option. They could probably do some additional things with cyber. They could do things with lower threshold bombs, but they are truly hoping for the U.S. to come in and solve this problem. I think that's the conversation that's going to occur in the sit room tonight.
David Sanger, there were thousands who turned out to protest yesterday in a variety of nations in the Middle East. Your newspaper had a lot of the coverage. We'll put up on the screen. There it is. Huge crowds rally across Middle East, venting anger at Israel, and I would say at the United States as well. Is this the answer to the question that I raised a week ago of whether the Iranians would rally around their own flag? Many of us, I know, had hoped that this would be a moment where they would show displeasure with their supreme leader. What do we know about the pulse of the Iranian people themselves?
Well, we don't know much because the internet in Iran has been largely turned off by the Iranian authorities because they're afraid that it was being used to track and kill many of their scientists, many of their military leaders, including some who the Israelis have claimed to have killed overnight. So it's really hard to get the pulse of the conversation. And of course, Iranians who do not really care for their current leadership, particularly Ayatollah Khamenei, may not be willing to put their name to that on the internet anyway. But we do know from history that one thing happens. When countries get attacked, it creates a nationalistic response. We even saw this in Iraq. Remember that President Bush thought that we would be greeted as liberators, and we were by some for a while, but then you saw what happened. Now, this is a very different kind of operation. The President Trump is not talking about putting American troops on the ground. His hope is that this would be a very surgical operation if he needs to go do it. But we all know, as you said in your opening, things happen. And if the Iranians react by taking shots at American troops, and there are more than 40,000 in the region, then all of a sudden we could be into something much bigger and deeper, and it could deepen that nationalistic response that you read about in the Times and see on those clips.
Admiral Stavridis, you're the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. NATO will gather next week. Take our final 60 seconds and tell me what you're looking toward with regard to that meeting.
In terms of Iran, I think there'll be some discussion about it, but frankly, the real focus of that meeting is going to be NATO defense spending, getting it up to the levels it should be at. So 3.5% pure military spending, another 1.5% on ancillary infrastructure, R&D. I think NATO will pull the trigger on a new goal of a total of 5%. That'll make the Trump administration happy, and it should. Bottom line, if you're Iran looking at that, you're thinking, okay, bad cop is Israel. The good cop, such as it is the United States. A better cop would be the European Union, but I don't see them having a serious role here. It's going to be about NATO spending, Ukraine, and how together the West can meet these challenges. But the number one thing at the NATO meeting is going to be Ukraine, something that has kind of slipped from the headlines in the face of all we're seeing about Iran.
It has. Gentlemen, thank you as always. We appreciate your expertise.